Hey, what's up, you guys? Ras Satya out here in Singapore, back at it. Night Owl Podcast, you know the drill. Last 3 years, man, have gone by in a flash. And let me tell you, it's been a great adventure to be able to document my journey and sit here and tell you things that I'm like realizing and recognizing on a daily basis. So what started out as just like, a way to recollect what happened during the day and the things that I had to deal with became more and more of like mini lessons that I'm learning myself. And as I learn them, the best thing to do to put them into your long-term memory is to teach somebody else. So here I go, running my mouth on this podcast as always, because I'm always finding something else to remind me how lucky I am, to remind me that, there's a better way to do things. There's an easier way to do things. It always reinforces my values and the way I feel about the world itself. And it could come from anywhere, honestly. It could come from TV, movies, it could come from music, lyrics, it could come from conversations, podcasts, books that I read, pretty much anything. I'm open. But the point being that I like how the universe reminds me of things that are important. And that's where I get all my content from. So without further ado, let's get back into the podcast itself. And let's talk today about the fact that I heard a quote that kind of had me wondering a little bit, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. The quote goes, "The choice you don't make will be made for you." And it took me a second. I was watching, what was I watching? I was watching The Order. It's almost like these people, they wanted to do something about this problem that they were having, but they didn't want to be hasty and just make a decision based on what they knew right now. What they wanted to do was wait a little bit and see how things shake out and then decide which side they were going to choose. But like I said, the quote mentioned that the decision you don't make will be made for you. Case in point, unfortunately, they waited too long and suddenly they had no choice but to defend their own lives because they hadn't chosen a side and the people could see that they hadn't chosen a side, and so they assumed that they were the enemy. A lot of times this happens in real life as well. I think Maston Kipp explains it as a divine storm. A lot of times you have little red flags along the way that tell you, hey, you know what, this isn't for me. It doesn't feel really good. I should stop it before it starts. It could get really messy. But for the most part, you're like, yeah, but it's not life or death. That's not so bad. I'm not going to fall off a cliff. It's not going to hurt my feelings or anything if I let this go for a little while. But chances are you let this one go and you let the next one go and you let every other occurrence in between go, and suddenly you find yourself highly frustrated, ready to lash out, and you don't know where to start explaining that this was never okay in the first place because you never drew a line in the first place. A divine storm is one of those moments where the universe kind of backs you into a corner. It forces you to speak up and speak your truth, as in decide once and for all, do you want to stay here or do you want to leave? Do you want to be this person or do you want to change? Do you want to tell this person it's not okay, or do you want to continue carrying on, letting them upset you every chance they get? Because obviously you haven't told them that it upsets you. They're not going to get it by osmosis. Not everyone is taught to notice human behavior. They're just too dense for that. A lot of times they're so consumed with their own problems that they don't notice what's going on around them. It's a few of us, psychopaths that really do notice when somebody's face changes, or when their body language changes to be a little more closed off than usual, when their speech patterns change, when they don't respond the same way. That's me. That's me and my brother. That's exactly how we are. We pay attention to that stuff. But not everybody knows that. So I'm saying, it's when you don't make a decision that the decision will be made for you. I had a situation where my client came to me and she was detailing how she came to this point in her life where she had to choose, am I going to stay married or am I going to get the hell out of here? Because it's becoming physically abusive and mentally straining, not to mention it's setting a really bad example for the little kid that was watching all this stuff go down. And I understood where she was coming from because I've been in that position too. That's the reason I made my decision. I realized that my life did not matter to my husband. My health, my wealth, my sanity, none of that mattered. As long as he had basics covered, as long as I paid the bills, he wasn't worried about nothing else. As long as the kids were taken care of, he didn't have to worry about nothing else. So I got this distinct impression that I didn't matter. And no matter what I said to him, it just didn't register for him. And so I realized, you know what, no matter what I say, and I did try as many times as I could in plain English, no hinting around stuff, no leaving, messages on fridges or anything. I specifically told him, look, this hurts my feelings. And to which he would start a fight and end up leaving the house, slamming the door behind him and be gone for hours at a time. So eventually I had to make a decision. Am I going to allow this to continue or am I going to stop it? And no, it was not easy because guess what? I had been there for 8 years. Okay, so trust me when I say I understand it when you're paralyzed by fear. I understand it when you feel like you're stuck and it's actually the other guy's problem. And how are you supposed to get out of it then? You're kind of stuck, right? So I had to realize that I could either put up with it or I could get out of it. And once I made the decision, the universe kind of like, organize itself in such a fashion that I could get what I needed to do. I could leave without too much of a fuss, and I could get to a place where I was safe, and I could restart my life where I felt supported, and that was really, really important for me. And it doesn't have to be something as extreme as domestic abuse in a marriage or anything. It could be something as simple as you have friends around you, right? You're supposed to choose your friends, not be friends with the people you see the most often. You're supposed to choose your friends. But most of us, we go through 6 to 12 years of school in the same place with the same bunch of kids, and the neighborhood kids become our friends. Why? Because it's proximity. You see them very, very often, right? But that also means that if you were to get upset with one of them, the group, the collective would kind of find a way to get you all back together because they don't want to lose anybody. And I've seen that happen in grown friendships here in Singapore as well, where they've all come together. They've all created this one culture or whatever where, something happens and they kind of brush it aside and they keep on going. But chances are, at some point or another, you're going to have a problem, like a real problem, allowing things to continue to manifest or to continue to fester, if that's the case. And in those situations, you're going to have to shit or get off the pot. You're going to have to either put your foot down and say no and risk losing all of them if it's like a hive mentality, or you're going to have to like keep on going through with whatever the culture dictates and bite your tongue and like stick it out. Those are the two options. There is no hybrid in between. Honestly, if you don't put your foot down, they don't get the chance to say yes or no, it's okay, or realize that they're doing something wrong or detrimental to the group itself. But in those situations, how easy is it to say no? How easy is it to decide what you're going to do with your life? It's not that easy. Why? Because we're never told to do those things. We're never told it's okay to do those things. We're more concerned with, oh my God, if I say this, they're going to start to see me differently. They're going to start to treat me differently. They're not going to include me in some things. They may think that I am making a fuss out of nothing. They may make fun of me going forward. It may become one of those stale jokes that everyone tells at parties or whatever. And you become completely obsessed with what the other person would think of you, forgetting the fact that you're actually disappointing yourself. I think I've said this before in a couple of podcasts, but how do you get over that? What do you do? What can you do? Because in a situation where you're considering this idea that the decision that you don't make will be made for you, it's almost like you're giving up your vote, your right to vote, your voice in a vote. If you don't stand up and say something, you could be the one ballot that kind of tips the scale. Or not. I mean, I know what politics is, obviously, but what if you could speak up? Wouldn't you feel better about the fact that you had the chance and you did something about it? And even if nothing came of it, you did your part. I know plenty of people that are going through a really, really rough time as far as family because they've been stuck in the same house for months now. And it's almost like they can't bear to be around those people anymore because there is a fundamental gap between what you understand and what they understand, what you believe and what they believe. Obviously, at some point, one of you changed, and now it's becoming more and more difficult to communicate with the other because you're missing each other in the process of this belief system that you've got going on. But a lot of times, what we would rather do is the path of least resistance. We'd rather walk away from those people and avoid them altogether, as in, if you see the guy, your brother in the living room, you're going to make sure that you don't go out in the living room until you know that he's not going to be there. Why? Because you don't want to get into a confrontation. You don't want to have any kind of misunderstandings. You want your peace of mind. You're going to just block everyone out of your mind and hope that it's enough that you can get through the day. And I understand it's a survival pattern, but this is very, very short term because the amount of stress you go through trying to hold your tongue and avoid somebody actually will manifest physically. You can get things like migraines. You can get things like nausea, heartburn. I've heard of people that suddenly feel like their legs go to jelly because they can't find a way to stand up to this person because maybe the other person is very, very intimidating. Maybe it's not just the fact that you have a difference in belief systems, but they pull rank on you. Maybe they're older than you. Maybe they're an elder in the family. But it could be any one of a million things. But the point being that if you don't stand your ground, if you don't say something and try to work on a long-term solution, you're going to be doing this fight or flight thing for the rest of your life. Family members, you can't really get rid of that fast, right? They're tied by blood. They're blood relatives. So at some point or another, someone's going to mention this person, you're going to cringe, you're going to feel something, and you're not going to be able to avoid them forever. So my fight for mental health is to try and get people to understand that there are short-term solutions and there are long-term solutions. Sure, short term you can say it's his fault and it's got nothing to do with me. They are the ones who have to change. Or you can realize that, you know what, long term, this is a problem for me and makes me very uncomfortable. So, in order to not let this become a problem with all of the people that I come around, I'm going to let them know off the bat what is okay with me and what's not okay. Because at that point, I'm giving them the chance to walk away or adjust their behavior. If you don't give them a chance to adjust their behavior, they're going to assume that you were okay with it all along. And case in point, this happens a lot in sexual situations. A lot of times people assume that there is consent because there's no explicit no. No, you didn't say yes, but no, you didn't say no either. And people will use that he said, she said bullshit just to get out of this whole situation altogether, which means the people who are preyed on don't stand a chance at defending themselves because it's his word against hers or whatever the case may be within that particular situation. I refuse to be a victim. I refuse to be in a situation where you're going to tell me that it's all the other person's fault. That means I have no say in the matter. That means I have nothing that I could have done that would have protected me, which means in the future I will always be a victim. Hell no, I'm not okay with that. So as much as I would like to think that, it's not the way I dress and it's not the way I spoke, I do have a right to speak up. And whether I'm paralyzed by fear or not, I have a right to say something somewhere. I have a right to protect myself. Just like if you're getting ready to fall, you put your hands out to kind of brace your fall, right? You could do the same thing in any of those situations. And it boggles the mind that people are quick to defend themselves and say, no, but I was paralyzed by fear. I get that. But before you get to a place of paralysis, there are other red flags. You know there are other red flags. If you see this going in a different direction, whether 3 hours ago you said you weren't interested or not, if it's headed that direction, you have a right to say, you know what, I'm going to excuse myself. You know what, I'm not cool with this. You have a right to say no several times along the way. It's not a disclaimer up front. You have to continue saying no. And unfortunately, because you didn't say yes, and you didn't say no, they're going to assume the better of the two. They're not going to do the benefit of the doubt. They're going to go with the better of the two. It's going to sound like, oh my gosh, okay, well, they're not stopping me, so they must be all right with it. They must be okay with it. Unfortunately, that's how people think. I want for people to be empowered. I'm not saying change the way you dress. I'm not saying change the way you speak. I'm not saying shut yourself down and hide for the rest of your life. That's not what I'm saying at all. You have a right to dress the way that you want to. You have a right to have your hair however you like. You have a right to show cleavage if you feel like it. If you have a right to wear skin-tight clothing if you like. It doesn't matter about that at all. What matters is what you do with the voice that you have. And I refuse to be in a situation where someone can say, oh, it's the other person's fault every time. Because if my problems are contingent about other people doing something about it so that they can be solved, that means I am powerless in the situation, and I refuse to believe that. I don't like being a victim. I don't like feeling like I am so afraid and so small and so useless that I can't affect change in my life because I've been there before. And it did not serve me. It allowed me to remain a victim for a long, long time. I mean, let's face it, I was married to the guy for 8 years. Another situation, I was sexually abused at a young age, and I did not confront the perpetrator. I went through other channels to get him to know that I knew what he did, and I remembered him from way back when. I had remembered these memories or whatever, but it took me 30 years to get over my fear of what would happen, to tell him, look, I know your family, and I have no choice in the matter about the fact that you're family, but you will stop expecting me to treat you like family. I will be courteous like I am to the janitor and the street sweeper, but I will not show affection, and you need to stop expecting that. That took me a very, very long time to do. But until I grew a set of balls and said something about it, I had to endure it, which means I was allowing it because I was so afraid. So I'm coming from a place of empowerment. I want you guys to be able to stand up. I want you to feel like you have a say in the damn matter. They might be bigger than you. They might be stronger than you. The people in your life may be older than you are, so they demand a certain level of respect. It could be a boss because you're an authority figure. It could be, upperclassmen that you're in school with. Whatever the case may be, You have a right to feel scared. And when you feel scared, you have a right to say so. And if they don't respect you saying so, you have a right to walk the fuck away. And that's just how it is. That's it. It's really tough to prove after the fact. But if you can hone your skills and really pay attention to what your body is telling, your body will tell you. You get weird shivers down your spine. You will get a weird knot in your stomach. You'll have a weird lump in your throat. You will know. You know, logically, you know. There is a chance this is going to go sideways. And at that point, you better start looking for the exits. It's the reason you get on a plane and the first thing they do is tell you where the exits are. In case something goes wrong, this is how you get out. Don't let yourself become a victim. Don't let yourself get pinned into a situation where the universe decides for you and you have no choice but to live through it and come out the other end. That shit is not fun. It is very painful. And guess what? Unpacking that trauma, takes a while. So if you have a chance to prevent it, if you have any single doubt, a shadow of a doubt, it's enough to say, no, you know what? I'm not cool. I need to be somewhere else. You know what? I'm tired. I got to go somewhere else. That is enough. It's perfect. Why? Because you have a right to feel safe at all times. You have a right to stop worrying about what the other person might think and if they might be offended. Fuck all that noise. Make sure you're safe. Make sure you are okay. Make sure you're in a place where if you called for help, someone might actually hear you. It's really, really important to me. It's what I'm teaching my kid. It's what I'm teaching the women around me. It's what I'm teaching the men around me. I've seen plenty of men being abused by women or other men as well. I've seen it happen over and over again. I've had it happen to me over and over again. And I don't want to see anyone else feel powerless. It is a terrible way to spend your life. Now, if you have any questions or comments about anything I've said today, please drop them in the comments below. But you know my heart. You know where I stand on this. Be yourself. Protect yourself. Try not to change, but do adjust for your sake. I love you guys. I'll talk to you again soon.